Hello, everyone. My name is Yao Edie, and I'm the Program Coordinator for Africa Center's Enhancing Gender Equity Program, and you are listening to Better Than the Cure, Preventing Intimate Partner Violence. As you know, this is a podcast series that has been featuring a series of guests from different fields, sectors, areas of knowledge to contribute their expertise on intimate partner violence, the impacts, factors, and consequences specifically on Alberta's African, Black, and Caribbean communities. Today, we have another special guest. We have Adebayo Chris Katiti, who's the CEO and founder of RARICAnow. They are also a musician, a singer-songwriter, and an active community leader in the trans community space, especially for individuals of African descent. So I will let Chris Adebayo tell us a little bit more about themselves before we jump into today's episode.
As you heard, my name is Chris Adebayo Katiti. My pronouns are he, him, they, them, mwami, sebo. I was born and raised in Uganda, moved to Canada, Edmonton specifically, in 2016.
Wow.
Yeah.
So kind of recently, kind of not, yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
So Adebayo, we're going to go with Adebayo today. We have a few questions for you and really love the work that you're doing, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community, especially for individuals of African descent. We know as Africans, or maybe as Black people in general, the community and relationship with LGBTQ is a little bit nuanced. It's not maybe as well received. There's a lot of stigma, basically, with the LGBTQ community, and that's further exacerbated when we look at intimate partner violence. So maybe you can start us off by just telling us a little bit of the work that you do or your experience with intimate partner violence or gender-based violence within the trans community.
Good question. So I work with 2S LGBTQ newcomers and refugees and center experiences of trans and gender diverse folks in the community, especially those from African descent. And we really approach our resources and share resources so that they're accessible in different ways. For example, we we have bi-weekly meetings where folks come in the space and meet, share ideas. They're part of the decision making of what goes down in the organization. And also we see, we have done different pride events that bring back pride to its roots, whereby it's the trans and queer Black folks who started pride, and we're always constantly opening eyes to the community. We do support folks with mental health supports and services, and that ranges in different stuff, and then asylum process when folks come here, how to navigate that, and some of them are not always prepared for the discrimination, racism they have to face when they come here. So
Yeah, it's a big shock, yeah.
it's a shock. Yeah, so we do that in relations to intimate partner violence. These are conversations that are ongoing, and we are having them constantly during our bi-weekly meetings and addressing them. We work with approaches with intimate partner violence and gender-based violence. Like, they go hand in hand,
Right.
and we try to address them in creating spaces where trans folks and gender diverse folks can come and tell their stories openly, and hold space for them, and make sure there are resources and supports in place for them to make sure that they walk away of in the room after sharing, supported, and knowing that they're not alone.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you're making these spaces, what are the main things you consider? What are the main things that, come to mind when you're like, okay, we want people to come and feel safe. We want them to feel heard. We want them to feel seen. What are the most important things to making that space happen? Because I'm just thinking, if people were to listen to this and they want to recreate that same space, what are the things that they have to consider that are necessary for that space to be created?
Yeah, as a creator of the space, you have no power to it. But the people that are accessing that space are the people who have the power to the space. So first of all, setting guidelines and letting them be a part of that, of how the space...
Making the guideline process.
For the space, right? Not you making those guidelines for them without them being present, right? So inviting them to be a part of that. Hey, what would an inclusive, safe, and brave space? I stick on brave space because sometimes we don't guarantee safety,
Yeah.
right? But then we also have to also make sure we talk about safety because we can't really walk away from it.
Yeah.
So making sure they're part of those guidelines that sets the tone and the energy of building the space, what exactly looks safe for you or brave for you, right? People have different
Definitions of safe
definitions
and
of
brave,
safety.
100%.
Exactly. But when it's a collective decision and
Right.
involvement, it makes the space kind of more neutral
For
and
everyone.
for
Yeah.
everyone, right? And you can feel the energy.
When you walk
Also, we make sure we invite our elders into the space before we
Really?
open up the space. We have our elders, our Black trans elders, Black indigenous elders, right? Two-Spirit elders into the space so that they can start us off with love, with care, with tenderness and understanding that we are in a space,
So it's kind of an intergenerational approach where you have the elders and the youth and everyone in between coming together.
Exactly.
Okay. And how has that worked? Have you found that the youth or the younger generation are receptive to being in a space with elders, or do they kind of separate themselves, or does it work when?
It has worked for us. It has worked for RARICANow, and even the events, even the bi-weekly meetings, even in our AGM, we make sure we have elders in space because harm can happen anytime.
Yes.
So having an elder in a space like that kind of creates that care and kind of ready, acceptable or accessible healing environment,
Yes.
right, for folks who might feel harmed. And we recognize if harm is made, and how do we really remedy that harm and move forward past it so that we don't in the process harm other people.
Yes, that makes sense. And elders, as we know, are the knowledge keepers too. So I really love that approach because it's a learning process. And elders and youth can learn from each other too, especially at times change. So in this spaces, as you interact with, trans folk, what are the unique challenges of the Black queer community that they experience with intimate partner violence that might be different from maybe other communities or other demographics?
Yeah, I've been really thinking about this a lot. Like, I've not been given a platform like this to talk it out, right? So I've been really thinking like so much, and I've been taking some notes. So the reality is intimate partner violence has many voices, right? And you can't separate it with the intersectionality.
Exactly.
Yeah, that folks struggle face intimate partner violence, the intersectionality, the intersect of gender identity and sexual orientation, that is seen also in the personal identity of like race, right? And you find that folks from these communities or gender diverse communities, their experiences of intimate partner violence with the systemic oppression, all plays a part.
Yes.
Right? And they have different approaches and different experiences and need to be intentionally involved in every level of healing, every level of conversation, every level of decision making, because what they experience is different. And most of the time, as a Black person and a trans person with refugee experience and immigration experience, you get what I'm saying? All those intersections, right? Like, there's so many levels of that can't really be ignored. The fact that we have our own partners so insecure of our identities, right? Going into spaces, but they want to speak for us about our gender identity. These are all forms of violence that some queer communities think they are immune from, but yet they are not. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And thank you for that, because intersectionality, especially when you look at the LGBTQ community, is a big thing. Like you just mentioned four alone, when you talk about being Black, being trans, being an immigrant, being a refugee, and God knows what else encompasses that. And it's,
Musician.
on top of that,
It's a lot, right?
And it can't really be summarized or condensed into one thing, because as you mentioned, it needs to be addressed at every single layer of interaction with the system or with the program or with, a resource. So I really appreciate that. And when we talk about these intersections, we know homophobia and transphobia, these are still big things in our community, and there's no point in beating around the bush. We know that these need to be addressed, and that it's a detriment to the people in our community who do identify as, LGBTQ or trans. So how do you think homophobia and transphobia play a part within Black communities, and maybe the intimate partner violence Black queer individuals could experience?
It might come in a form of isolation, right, within our communities and also with our partners. When I mean with our partners, this is what I mean, like whereby your partner denies you, says, don't talk to these people, or these are my friends, or we have broke up, or when you break up with your partner, it's like, oh, this is my friend, you can't talk to them, right? You get what I'm saying? So that violence, right, denies the victim or the survivor a chance to speak to somebody, right, about what is happening. Now, when it comes to the Black communities, the fact that they have internalized homophobia, internalized transphobia, come from all wherever we come from in Africa with this hate, with this homophobia and transphobia about the community, and bring it here. We've seen so many parents kicking out their children because they've come out as LGBTQ or as transgender, right? So leaving the Black, trans, and queer LGBTQ community in complete isolation. Not even COVID did what they have done for us, to our communities. Like COVID it was a usual thing for us, right? We were used to that, right? Yeah.
And do you think this isolation makes people more prone or more vulnerable to violence or intimate partner violence, because now you're lacking that support system or support group that maybe other people have? But now when you're alone, do you think that it actually puts people more at harm, because now you experience maybe, or you get into situations that you wouldn't get into had you had a support system?
100%. And it comes with all forms of, first of all, physical abuse, financial abuse, right? Emotional abuse, right? So, like you, for example, I will also work with undocumented immigrants, right?
Okay.
But like I said, we share like different stories, right? They come in and they say, oh, my partner doesn't want me to leave the house. If I leave the house, they're going to tell the Canada Border Service agencies to come for me, or I been like violently and physically being like abused by my partner, but told me I can't speak to it. If I speak to it, I will not get married, so that I can get my status or my
citizenship,
PR or citizenship, right? So they use violence as as a leeway to like do this harm to folks. And when it comes to finances, like, oh yeah, I'm controlling they're in control of the finances. And also constantly, most of the time, intentionally use wrong pronouns, misgendering, and also dead naming. By dead naming, I mean like a trans person. I have the name you have wasn't my name at the birth, right?
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So, however, my surname is the name at birth, but my first name was a Christian name, which I used to be called Fiona, right? So when someone calls me that name, is dead naming me, because Fiona is dead.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Adebayo Chris is your name now as it is.
Exactly,
Okay.
right? So when someone did name me intentionally, right, even though I look this transome, right, it's violence,
It's a form of
right?
violence,
Yeah,
yes.
emotionally it affects the community really so hard. And even like the violence like we face, like the dramatic violence, where in some LGBTQ spaces, like some people start creating so much drama right, against the partner,
Yeah.
right? We see it in the
Yeah.
community, right? That's literally like emotional violence and intimate partner violence, right? In these public and social spaces. Yeah.
No, thank you for that, because I think a lot of the time, yeah, when we say intimate partner violence, and we've discussed this before with other guests, it's like the physical things, what comes to mind right away. People think it's just, physically beating or harming, but the things that you mentioned with misgendering or dead naming, which is something I personally didn't know. So thank you for teaching me that, and the implications it has on emotional or even mental wellness can be considered abuse. So that's definitely something that I think a lot of people are going to take away from this. So I appreciate that. And when we talk about and the resources and programming and safe spaces for LGBTQ, queer, trans youth, or individuals in general, how can we make sure that these services and resources are inclusive and culturally responsive? Because you mentioned these intersections. So yes, you may be LGBTQ, you may be trans, you may be queer, but you're also Black. And you mentioned your work is with African descent. So how do you make sure that you're really reaching and catering your services to people of African descent that are still part of the LGBTQ community?
That's really a good question, honestly speaking. But I believe people have to be intentional when they are creating spaces. We have seen communities just putting rainbow flags on their doors, or saying, "Oh, we are inclusive, we are so diverse." It's like a song,
Yeah.
a good morning that they keep saying,
Yeah.
right? But then when inside their spaces, they're full of homophobia, they're full of transphobia, full of racism, right? And the fact that the society norms of heterosexual normative way of life has a way of creating a safe space or an inclusive space. They take over
Yeah.
everything. And you're like, damn. Yeah. So considering all these, intersectionality, the intersectionality of race, intersectionality of how to create a space, intentional, inclusive space for trans and gender diverse folks, because we have walked into spaces and we have been dead named. We have been seen as people who are going there to take out resources. We've been denied access to spaces, access to our own communities. We've been denied access to healing, right? As survivors of intimate partner violence, right? I think we need access to healing. With funders or our elders or our people who fund the work we do don't fund healing spaces, right? Don't fund joyful spaces. Really spaces that will invite in our communities to perhaps start that journey of healing, right? We've always been told to, oh, you are the person who is causing the problem and the harm, because you're staying your abuser, so you are part of it, right? Forgetting that people just speak without actually knowing, right? People assume things that they don't know. They assume our gender identity. They assume what intimate partner violence is. They assume what clothes people are supposed to wear. But forgetting that those things don't align with so many people, right? So maybe I would say considering involvement of survivors and letting them like creating spaces. Like, even if I told myself, like, even if I create a space and no trans person comes in, right, in that moment, right, it's okay. I will hold that spot
Hold it.
for a trans person.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not trans,
You can't have it.
you can't have it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm intentional about what I'm creating,
Yes.
right? So it's not that, okay, there is this person here. No, right? Let them heal. When they get the courage to get out of the places of their abusers, let them find a spot ready for them, right? Let them know that the spot is there. Like, you really don't have to, you know. And maybe also understanding that intimate partner violence is not only caused by strong men.
Yeah.
Everybody is,
Yes.
can cause intimate partner
100%.
violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I love this talk about the healing, so I'm gonna kind of get into that after. But if you were to have unlimited resources, you have the money, you have the time, you have the capacity, what would your space look like? What would you create to prevent intimate partner violence for trans folks? So whether it's providing, you talked about healing, so what does that look like? Is it just coming and talking? Is it providing skills? Is it providing education? I'm just trying to paint a picture here. If you had unlimited resources, all the money, all the time, all the manpower, and you got to create this, preventative space to protect people of the community from intimate partner violence, what would that look like?
This will be a collective involvement of my community. But speaking to what I have seen and what I have done, right? Perhaps tomorrow it will be a different thing, right? But what I've done, what I've seen is making sure they're involved and walking away, not walking away, but perhaps giving different options of addressing mental health harm and violence from the norm of sitting aside by the therapist with a counselor, and let people go into the community, let them be involved in activities, let them do art, let them go to these nice places, for example, water park, let them go for a retreat, let them go for a board house retreat. We do that at Rarica, right?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, let them go there, right? Let them find connection outside the norm of addressing violence.
So as opposed to maybe the formal things, doing activities or having experiences that maybe aren't, related to or so focused on, intimate partner violence. Okay, that's awesome. And have you had any, in your experience with your organization, have there been any obstacles in engaging trans folk or engaging, the resources that's needed to prevent intimate partner violence, or how successful in general has your program been?
Yeah, honestly, there have been so many obstacles. First of all, which is an obstacle of trust, right? Like, you can't really rush people to trust you. That has been an obstacle, and the resources that very few funders fund the work of Black trans to LGBTQ, and the fact that it is also Black trans to LGBTQ that are doing this
Yeah.
work. Kind of, we are expected to deliver the same way our white counterparts or cis heterosexual leadership deliver, which is a myth, because we can't really work at that level. The fact that it's grassroots and our approach is different, right? And we have very limited to no resources to different programs. That has been a huge obstacle. But what we have been able to do to secure is making sure we work away a little bit, provide grocery shopping for our members, right? For they can ride their partner, especially those who are undocumented. They're like, oh, I have to go to get groceries, whatever. So that's a leeway, a little bit of a fresh air, right? So we go get groceries together, give them groceries, and then go to different boat house, stay there for like 4 days, right, on water. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
Hot
awesome.
tub, just floating. Yeah. So that, and then going the mountains, we've been able to, like previously, we have our every December retreat and the middle of the summer. So the December retreat is more of, coming together as a family, eating dinner together, spending time in the mountains. Like nature is such a healer that people, I think, undermine. Yeah.
And that's definitely important when you look at unorthodox ways of healing. So when we mentioned the healing spaces, that's something that potentially to cater to this community, giving them opportunity to do all the things that you just mentioned. And when you do this work, obviously the LGBTQ community is going to be at the forefront. But how important is allyship in supporting the work that you do from other communities, especially in protecting or preventing intimate partner violence?
Allyship, royal allies are very important to the work. We have performative allies as well. So, I mean, I love seeing them from the far because it's also important for them to make noise. But I will prefer royal allies into the space I create.
And do you mind just defining royal allies?
Royal allies are allies who who speak up for you even if you're not there, who will, address, like if like a group of people having a conversation and they're talking about Adebayo or this person transitioned and they misgender me, say, oh, she transitioned too. The royal ally will be like, oh, hold on. Their pronouns are him, they, them. So you are going to refer them. Now, if they refuse, a royal ally will be like, we cannot have this conversation, or I would rather walk away and not be a part of this conversation. A royal ally will advocate for me in my absence, will go source resources. If my community is struggling, or if I don't have bus tickets or whatever, they will come in and pinch in, make sure my community is fed, even when I'm away. Now, a performative ally, those are the people who put the rainbow flag on their door. Those are the ones who will contribute in a conversation that is so harmful to a community. But then when they come where I am, they will feel like they're so, like they're allies, like they're part.
Your number one supporter and everything.
Those are the people who will be microaggressive to me when I'm in that space, right? But because they are like, no, I have so many black friends.
Oh.
I have so many trans friends. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
okay, thank you for defining that. Yeah. So royal allies are essential, basically, to the work that you're doing. And if you want to prevent intimate partner violence or protect the trans community, you need royal allies.
You need them.
Okay.
You need those bodies.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then when we look at challenging these stereotypes and harmful, you mentioned the microaggressions, you mentioned the misgendering, dead naming, and these are all come from stereotypes and I think harmful assumptions about the Black queer community. How can we challenge these with the royal allies that you mentioned, or just as a Black community, African Caribbean community in general? How can we challenge these harmful stereotypes and assumptions?
The Black community really needs to open up their eyes and walk away from the heterosexual normative way of living lives, of how things have to run, how religion said this, you get what I'm saying, how my God doesn't want this, how Allah doesn't want this, how our parents, this is our culture, not actually having the background of what culture they're talking about, right? So in that process, they have to walk away from that, what they were taught, or what they learned, or what society told them is the normal, right? To have an open eye, right? And learn, so that they can unlearn that the world is not binary, right? The world is non-binary. There are people who are different, right? The people who are different, we can learn from them. The LGBT community members are our members. They are our family. They are our relatives. They are our brothers and sisters. They are doctors who are going to treat us when they're sick, right? They are people in the community who are going to sell food to us to eat, right? So they have to to unlearn, right? Create an environment that teaches them. So many of them are ignorant, right? And there is education out there, but there's some who choose to be ignorant, who have chosen not to understand, who have chosen to decide with the Bible. The Bible created Adam and Eve. Oh, really? Why did the Bible create more Adams and more Evas, right? If it was that, like, there is so many that I can really speak to directly, but if our community continue isolating us, there is nobody, there is nowhere to run to, right? We are disproportionately affected by violence, right? Even within our own communities, we want to come to our Black communities when it comes to racism, but we're not welcome there. So we have to deal with it by our own selves, despite knowing they face racism, I face racism too, right? But there are so many, they're in that, they have put us in a box, in a corner where, no, you are evil. You don't belong here. But when we are rich, they want our money. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, why do you want the evil money? You get what I'm saying? So, I mean, when it comes to violence, really, our community has performed so much violence to the Black LGBTQ communities, and I think we are tired, like we are really exhausted, and they do have the capacity to invite us in because they are parents, they are elders, right? They can say, you know what, I accept you as you are. You're still my daughter, you're still my son, you're still my cousin. Like, that doesn't change who you are. Yeah, because we face violence with our partners and we can't even tell our parents. We can't even tell our communities, right? We don't even see them in our event spaces. Right? We don't see them there. But we show up in the events they organize, right? But we don't see them in our event spaces. The stigma around there, I think every Black person out there need to do a check, right? How many Black LGBTQ friends I have? How many do I interact with them on a daily basis? Do I really know how their gender surgery went? How was the healing?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So that.
Okay, that's an amazing answer, and thank you for that. I know I'm asking really loaded questions. And
You are asking loaded questions.
We want the details, we want the insights, so thank you. And just before we wrap up here, just to kind of really tap into the insights, you mentioned that Black queer folks do experience violence with their partners, but you can't go to family members, you can't go to, community. So where do folks like that go? Like, obviously, there's your program, but what else is out there? Is there anything out there to support, people from this community? And what really, maybe on a specific level, does that violence look like? We talked about misgendering, we talked about dead naming. How much far does it go when you look at finances, emotional, physical, and what are the causes for it? Is it the same as maybe a heterosexual couple? Are there different nuances? Just kind of like painting the picture of, from start to finish, what causes that violence? What does it look like? And where do they go to get the support? Because it's not families, it's not community members, or if there's that support even available.
You know what? I'll be lying if I say the support is not there. Yeah, the support is there.
Okay.
But we need more support. I think our communities are forced into healing or forced into safe spaces when they are not ready, right? So they can't wait, or the supports can't wait, or a little bit like that. But yeah, there are supports, and I hope my community hear this, right? That the support is there. Right? I know it takes a little bit for you to trust, but the support is there. I emphasize that, right? But there's some supports which most of these places are very white centered, right?
They don't focus on the African or Black communities.
Black communities, right? Our experiences, like I said in the beginning, right, are completely different, right? We need different intergenerational approach, anti-oppressive approach, right? And which it will happen, right? I'm very, very hopeful. But when you look at some of the things I perhaps didn't mention when it comes to the trans community, is that our partners, some of our partners, tend not to support our gender affirming surgeries, right?
Really?
Yeah, you can have, it's so sometimes so dismissive. Like your partner can be like, oh, I love your chest, I still love, your breasts or whatever, right? But clearly I had this conversation with my partner. I'm a trans person and I want surgery, right? Not every trans person goes through surgery, though. But like if I've had that conversation with my partner and my partner is kind of gaslighting and telling me how my breasts look good, or you get what I'm saying? So
And
that is another
change,
form of violence, right?
Okay.
And also our partners forcing us into different sexual activities that we might seem not to want, right? And then they are just, oh, I want this because I've seen it. I want to see how it feels. I want heterosexual people have done it. I want to try it, right? Forgetting that it's not what I want, right? So you find yourself manipulated and violated, even unknowing. Like so many LGBTQ and trans people are used to being violated, like because they're like, oh yeah, I've seen so many things, that is a small thing, it's okay, I will bypass it. Violence is violence,
Yes.
right?
No matter how big or small.
No matter how small it is. But our communities are deep down in swimming in violence. So that small one, they're like, oh.
Compared to the,
Compared to the big one, like, oh yeah, it will pass. But that's how it's grow. Because I say we grow every day. We grow every day. Tomorrow I'm going to be a different person, right? And people who think I'm the same person they used to know 2 years ago or the other day or 1 year ago and bring perhaps my mistakes to this new person, right? That is wrong because I grow every day. We are human beings. Anything that is not growing is dead, right? We grow every day, and every day we are new people, right? This conversation has perhaps contributed to my growth. Like I have so much wisdom.
Mine too.
You get what I'm saying? So someone who saw me yesterday, I've grown so much that they need to catch up. Right? So, create that space where I can share this wisdom with them, right? But people have taken back, communities into those dark spaces because they want you to be in those spaces with them, right? If a survivor started their journey of healing, let them be.
Yes.
Don't bring them back into those dark spaces because you are still comfortable in those spaces, right? Yeah. So we really also have to create intentional spaces for our men who do this violence, or our partners who do this violence, right? Intentional spaces so that they can also heal. Right? It's not about hunger. Some people say, they're hungry, hunger management. Oh, if a police comes there, why don't you beat your partner or your wife? So
Yeah.
with other people, you're not hungry. Where are you hungry with
Exactly,
your partner?
yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that would be like the approach I could say.
No, that's awesome, and definitely a lot of insight there. And I think the last question for you as we wrap up, how can people stay connected with you after they hear this and they just love the work that you're doing or they want to keep up? What's the best way for them to get in contact, to connect, or to just keep up with the work that you're doing?
Well, I have my social media out there. I'm also an artist. So I tell my activism, tell my story, speak out what I need to speak out also through music. Where they can catch me to my Instagram of Black Trans Adebayo. I'm the only Black Trans Adebayo. So you can look for me on Instagram and via email consult@adebayo@gmail.com. Yeah, it's just I'm doing some different services and some presentations and education work in the community.
Okay.
Share what I have to share.
Yes.
Share the wisdom so I don't go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. So I think maybe we can even put that, in the caption or in the description box for everybody listening or watching, just to make it easier for them to find you and catch up with you. But thank you so much for joining me today and kind of shedding light on the Black, queer, LGBTQ, trans community in general, because definitely voices like yours need to be amplified. So I'm really happy that you took the time to share that with me today. And thank you everyone for listening and watching. This is Adebayo Chris Katiti and myself, Yawa Edie from the Africa Center today. We hope that you're able to draw some insight, learn something new, and be able to implement some of these things maybe in the future work or current work that you are doing. But once again, thank you all for listening. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you.